Hi, my name is Genevieve Garrett. I'm a licensed clinical social worker at the Center for Advancement of Youth at the University of Mississippi Medical Center, and I'm the social work supervisor for Mississippi Thrive Child Development Project. During today's session of Play, Eat, Learn, I'll be talking about toddlers, tantrums, and tools to manage it all. Thank you guys for coming so much. I'm glad to see that we have actually a pretty good group here, so I'm excited. Yay. My name is Genevieve Garrett. I'm a licensed clinical social worker at the Center for Advancement of Youth that's at the University of Mississippi Medical Center, and I'm also the supervising social worker for the Mississippi Thrive Child Development Project. As I talk, please ask questions during the talk because I don't want you to forget, and it's easier for me to answer questions if we're talking about that situation or topic right then. Don't be afraid to interrupt. I'm gonna ask you guys questions. Please share any feedback. I'm not worried about being interrupted. Interrupt me if you want to, okay? And like I said, all the pictures are my kids, so sorry it's not very a diverse group of kiddos in here, but since becoming a parent, I've gotten a lot of material to work with. I'm sure you guys will all relate to this, saying, I was legit the best parent. Like, I was #1, knew everything, expert, until I had kids, right? And then that was like, I was like, oh, everything became clear. The things I had witnessed going on with different parents, kids screaming on airplanes, and I got annoyed, and I got it. Oh, that's how it is, right? So now, and I love to connect with my patients and my families that way, because I get it. Everything I talk about, I guarantee you my kids have gifted me that to have to manage at home. So when I work with kiddos with anxiety, I've been there because I have a daughter that has was diagnosed with selective mutism, right? I have a son who's I call him spirited. So I've got kiddos that gave me really good material, so I'm actually thankful for that because that made me a really good therapist because I know what it's like at home. So there's the first picture of a kiddo. A toddler. I want you guys to tell me what you think about when I say toddler. Anything you think.
Noise with dirt.
What?
Noise with dirt.
Noise? I love that. I should add that. Noise with dirt. What do you think of when I say toddler? Toddler behavior.
The Energizer bunny.
Energizer. Yes.
Hanging on stuff.
Hanging on. Oh yes, hanging on stuff. Okay. All this is going to come into play as we talk. Anything else?
Opinionated.
Yes. We're going to talk about that. That newfound opinion that they have come up.
They love to explore.
Yes, explore. All these things are great. Yes, they're all going to be things we talk about. So ages between 1 to 3, right? But what I'm going to talk about today is going to be relevant for younger and older kids too. So think about your kiddos, the kiddos you work with. For the people that work here, think about how you can use these skills with the kids you interact with. Because when I talk, I like to give tools to put in your toolbox. I'm not just going to come up here and talk about research. I'm not going to just tell you, although I have really good books to recommend, I'm going to give you a set of tools that you can take home tonight and use with any kid you interact with. They're tools that I would give a parent in the clinic. Okay, a toddler is just learning to walk, thus the name toddler, right? So that young age toddler, that 1-year-old, they're just learning to get around. They live in the moment. Somebody said explore. You can look at a toddler and they're loving life. Don't you all wish you could just be that toddler and just love and explore? And I have to remind people, they're exploring, that's their job. And so we're going to talk about that. That's their job as a toddler. This was I believe I got this from this book, The Emotional Life of a Toddler. I'm a baby and a big girl. Doesn't that encompass it all? I'm a baby, I need to be taken care of, I need you to lay with me to sleep, cuddle me. I can do it myself, I don't need you. I'm a baby and a big girl, that encompasses it all. For older kids too sometimes, right? Sometimes described, oh, I'm getting cut off, that's okay. Sometimes I'm described as being terrible twos or a three-nager. I know you've all heard this, but we're gonna get rid of those labels. Locomotion plus personal will equals trouble. And that's what you guys said, right? Climbing on stuff. They've got opinions. They know what they want to do, and they're going to do it because there's nothing that's stopping them. Why can't I eat this whole cake? There's nothing wrong with that. It's delicious. I'm going to eat it all. A young human, okay, let me get this because it's kind of cut off. A young human who is emerging from a year-long initial period of almost total reliance on the parents. And now they're eager to discover the world and his or her place in it. Doesn't that perfectly describe a toddler? So we've been taking care of this tiny little human, meeting every single need. They don't have to do anything, and we've been there to meet their needs. And now the world's open to them, and they want to discover it. They're like, oh, I'm a separate person from my adult human, and I can do things. That's a toddler. Okay, so give me some things about parenting a toddler. Emotions. What comes up when you're parenting a toddler?
How do I keep them alive?
How do I keep them alive? You've kept this baby alive by feeding it and clothing it. Now there's this new battle. How do I keep it alive? Yes?
Well, I know one thing, like when I was growing up, I was always, if I asked, because I asked all the time, why am I supposed to do this? Why are you telling me to do this? Why do I do it and you don't? And I always got, because I said so. Well, that was never good enough for me, and I always genuinely wanted to know why, and the reasoning behind why this adult was telling me to do something, which is something I do with my child now. And once I explain to her exactly why my decision is what it is, then she accepts it and goes on about her business. She doesn't cry and scream about it, she just does it.
I love that. That is the exception, not the rule. No, but I love that policy of doing that. Yes, describing that. Anything else? Parenting a toddler.
Battle of wills.
Battle of wills. Yes, we're going to talk about that for sure. Battle of wills. They've got an opinion. You've got an opinion. Yep. So we're going to talk about butting heads. So it brings about a restructuring of the relationship, right? Like you've had this infant. You've had they've come to you helpless. You've taken care of them, cuddled them, patting them, feeding them, makes everything better. So you have to change your relationship. It's a new and I think about this as I watch my children grow and see pictures of them when they were little, and how you have to mourn each phase that they go through. You miss that, and now, but you also have to celebrate it too. And so we got to restructure our relationship with them. And something that we have to do is we have to nurture the two basic human motivations that are going on in this little person: the needs for attachment and exploration. Right? So tonight we're going to have some tools on how to do both of those things. Nurture attachment, but also foster that sense of exploration. So we have to navigate shifting between protecting them and letting go. You didn't have to do that with an infant, because you could protect them all the time. You didn't have to let them go at all. With a toddler, you have to navigate between those two worlds. You're protecting them because they don't know how to survive on their own yet. But you also have to foster that sense of exploration and be willing to let them explore. And the way we do that is by becoming a secure base. And I love this term. So you're a secure base. The base is somewhere you return to, right? You go out and do your missions and you return to that base. And so you're going to be that secure base for them. And that's going to foster that attachment and that sense of exploration. A lot of these concepts that I'm talking about, the secure base, comes from the Emotional Life of the Toddler. I don't get any proceeds from recommending this. It's a great book. And so a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about come from this book, and I'll talk about some of the other books that I'm going to reference as well. And so a secure base, or secure base behavior, is that balance between attachment and exploratory behavior. So how do we go about creating that secure base? First of all, it's evolutionary. This is their job. To keep them alive, they move closer to those they trust for protection. So way, way long ago, a baby hears a lion or a tiger, they go to the person that they trust most to keep them safe. Or a toddler, I say a toddler or a child, goes to what they know to keep them safe. They know the grown-up has the tools to keep them safe because they don't know that yet. They hear a loud sound. They see a stranger that they don't recognize. They go to their secure base. It's evolutionary, it's natural. It's that attachment instinct, and we're gonna talk about how to nurture that. They need help to feel safe. So suck it up, get over it. That doesn't work. They're not there yet. They need help to feel that sense of safety. So they fall, they get up. They need you to tell them it's okay because you're helping keep them safe, because that was a threat to their safety. Yes?
Some people say that you're, like with sleeping, that you're supposed to let them cry it out in their own room, in their own bed, but evolutionarily it seems like that's not what you should do. Because if something's screaming, then that attracts predators and things like that. What do you think about that?
I'm not going to get into that debate, but you kind of, I mean, that kind of fits in well with what I'm talking about, right? That
It's safe, and if you're not there, if you just let them cry it out, to me it seems harsh as a parent. But
right. So there's definitely two schools of thought with that. And that is definitely one school of thought. They're more likely to explore if they know they have that secure base to return to. So they're more likely to feel safe to go out and try new things if they know that that person that they find security with, that keeps them safe, is going to be there when they return. Okay, so now is our first set of tools that I'm going to give you to put in your toolbox. So to kind of become that secure base, to strengthen that sense of security in them, make them feel safe, I'm going to give you a set of tools that we use in all different kinds of therapy, that play therapists use to build rapport with kids. And so in what we call parent-child interaction therapy, I teach parents these skills, because it's great if I as a therapist have a relationship with a child. It's great if they love me and want to come play with me and listen to my directions, but that doesn't do the family any good. It doesn't solve any problems that they came to us for. And so these are definitely skills that I used with my children growing up, and that I use with all children that I interact with. They're called child-directed interaction skills. They're play therapy skills. One of the types of therapy that they're used a lot is in trauma work, because when a kid comes in to manage a trauma history, they need to feel safe. They need to feel secure. They don't just come in and start telling me their trauma story. We do play therapy first to make a safe space for them so that they feel comfortable. But these are skills also that we teach parents that come in for concerns about behavior. Before we start doing any behavior management, or I shouldn't say before we start doing the discipline portion of therapy, we do the attachment building, we do the foundation building portion, child-directed interaction. And when I use the word discipline for this age, and really for all ages, and the true meaning of the word is to teach and to guide, right? So when I say discipline, I'm not talking about consequences, which may come into play as children get older. For toddlers, I could talk about natural consequences. I'm not during this talk, but we're going to talk about teaching and guiding. So disciplining, not giving consequences. So child-directed interaction, we've all heard of timeout, I'm sure. But not as many people have heard of time in. And so child-directed interaction skills are what we call time in. It's all the other stuff that happens outside of timeout. And so we do not recommend timeout for the toddler age, but we'll talk a little bit about that. Or I don't recommend it. I'm not going to say nobody recommends it. But to me, I don't think it's the time out that necessarily changes the behavior. It's actually the quality of the time in. Because if the time in isn't good, the time out won't be effective, because what are you getting a time out from? So you have to really strengthen that time in order for the consequences to be effective when we start using them later on. So these skills are teaching you to provide really good quality time in with a kiddo. Focuses on relationship building and strengthening, again, that secure base to return to. And it emphasizes the use of positive attention and positive reinforcement. So in this phase, when we do in parent-child interaction therapy and we give the home therapy practice of 5 minutes of playtime a night, we ask that you use these skills during that 5 minutes of playtime at night at first. But then you learn how to kind of trickle it throughout the day. It's especially easy to do, I find, with other kids. You know, during work, like if you worked at somewhere like this, it would be easy to sprinkle it in with other kids that you work with. At home, you have to find times to do this, right? Because there's times when you need to be in charge. But do it 5 minutes a night using these skills. And research shows that just that 5 minutes a night is long enough to be therapeutic. Not too long that it's so time consuming, because if I said 30 minutes, you might be like, whoa, I gotta cook dinner, we gotta take baths. 5 minutes is long enough to be therapeutic. It's designed to increase that positivity and warmth of caregiver-child interactions, because like someone said, battle of the wills, right? And so when you have a kid that's very, very spirited, then sometimes more of your interactions become this, right? So you can have a whole day of interactions like this. I know what that feels like. You can have a whole day of being given directions, correcting, managing big emotions. So we have to put back in those positive interactions. Research shows that healthy relationships, this is parent-child, this is spouse, this is friends, healthy relationships require 5 positive interactions for every 1 negative interaction. With kids who are spirited and come in for behavior issues, a lot of times that gets reversed and they have 5 negative interactions for every maybe 1 positive interaction. So these skills are kind of teaching you to put back in that positive interaction. It's delivered as a set of skills that caregivers can utilize at home. So again, we teach the parents how to do these skills at home. When they come in for therapy, when the child's behavior is, I would say, at a clinical level, but not necessarily at a level that the parent feels like they need help with. Sometimes we don't get kids until it's the behaviors have really escalated, because I've heard pediatricians sometimes say it's normal, it's normal, it's normal. It may be typical, it may not be unusual, but to me, if a parent's asking for help, get them to someone that can help them manage those behaviors. So when they come in to see us and we recommend parent-child interaction therapy, the way we deliver it is we teach the skills, and then we're in a room with a one-way mirror, and I'm on the other side talking to the parent through an earpiece. So even in that phase of treatment, I'm not delivering the therapy, the parent's delivering the therapy, and I'm just guiding them through it. So we teach the parent the skills. It includes guidance on how to respond to emotional dysregulation. That's not something that was included in parent-child interaction therapy, the standard version for ages 2, 3 to 7, but when they did the toddler version of it, they included that, and I've begun to include that for all kids, but we know that toddlers really need that emotion regulation piece. Okay, so child-directed interaction follows your toddler's lead in the play. It avoids leading or intrusive behaviors, so they're leading the play. You may wonder, how can a toddler lead the play? How can they be the one in charge? And I'm going to show you some of the skills how to do that. So you're not taking the play where you want it to go. You're letting them take it where they want to go. And again, this is a standard technique that play therapists used. It includes underreaction to minor misbehaviors, and I don't really like the term misbehaviors, but I can't think of another way to describe it. Those behaviors that they're exploring, but that we don't want to happen. The one that happens all the time that I use an example is playing with the light socket. So it's not a misbehavior, but it's something that most parents really have a big reaction to, especially in the clinic. But, oh yeah, they have a huge reaction to that. So we're going to talk about how to underreact, but how to modify those behaviors. And it's the foundation, again, for effective discipline. And I don't like, people kind of misinterpret discipline, so I put teaching beside that. So it's the groundwork for the effective teaching. Okay, so all these handouts, I did not provide them, and let me give them credit because I'm realizing that it's not on here. All these are from the UC Davis website. If you Google PCIT Toddlers, they're all there for free. All the handouts, the treatment protocol, the UC Davis PCIT Toddler website. You can get these handouts from. I love them because they have pictures on the new version, so I use these when I teach the skills. So these are the skills that are used in child-directed interaction during that 5 minutes of home therapy that we recommend, and during the coaching during our session. They're skills that I use when I interact with children in the office. They're skills that I interact with my own use when I interact with my own children, and they're easy to remember because they spell pride. So a lot of these are going to be easy to sprinkle throughout your day as well. One of my favorites is praise. There's differing opinions on praise, but it's really effective with kiddos and encouraging certain behaviors. There's 2 types of praise. Unlabeled praise would be like, great job, thank you, well done, and that feels good. But labeled praise is the behavior changer and the one that feels really good, and the teacher. For toddlers, it's the one we use for teaching. Thank you so much for sitting like a big girl. I love it when you use your words to ask me. Thank you for stacking the blocks so carefully. So you're telling them exactly, and this is super effective in schools. We also do teacher-child interaction therapy. So an example would be of a kid that I may have witnessed a kid being called out because they weren't raising their hand. You gotta raise your hand. Let me think of a name. Tommy, you gotta raise your hand. That was not the kid's name. Tommy, you gotta raise your hand. Why aren't you raising your hand? And then finally, after many, many warnings, and the teacher didn't acknowledge that. So I was in the back. I think I was at my kid. I don't remember what I was doing, but I said, "Good job raising your hand, Tommy." And so he smiled, right? Because he was like, "Oh, now I know what is expected of me." Right? So it's being pointed out. So with little ones, pointing out the behavior that you want to see more of, like the examples here, great sharing. Whoo, that's huge for our toddlers, isn't it? That is a skill that does not come naturally. So great job sharing, awesome talking, beautiful music. So whatever it is, the behavior that you want to see more of, then you're going to praise that. Reflect speech, and this is also something that speech therapists would recommend. It shows your child that you're paying attention. It helps them pronounce words. You can teach them vocabulary. It increases their chance to add more. So, for example, my daughter would say, I go cool. So I could say, you are going to school today. I reflected back what she said, corrected the school without making her feel bad about not saying school right. And eventually it corrected itself. And just recently I was reminded of the magic of this one. Well, and I think all the skills played a role of a child that came in and who had some limited language skills, and parents learned these skills. And I'm not saying it's because of this, but I think it played a role, and that after a few sessions, the child's vocabulary just flourished, and was talking a lot more. I think it helped vocabulary, but it also helped her feel safe in that setting, to feel like she had a space that she could use her voice. Imitate play. So that's just imitating what your child's doing. It shows you approve of what they're doing. It helps them to model you model behavior for them, and I'm gonna demonstrate this in a minute. Helps them feel important and teaches them how to interact. So it helps you play at their developmental level, so that you're not building a castle when they're stacking 2 blocks, right? So if they are stacking, we'll pretend like these are blocks, 2 blocks, you can say, oh, Sally, I like how you're stacking. Mommy's gonna stack just like you. I'm gonna put 1 block on top of the other. So they're hearing what I'm doing, seeing that they're doing the same thing. It allows me to play at the exact level that they're on, so I'm not playing above them or below them. It's also modeling how to join in play. So you're modeling that you see a kid play and you go do what they do to kind of join in a group play. So you're modeling that social skill so it can improve their social skills. Describe is the one that you can spend the most time doing. This is one you can use with a child that has very limited language. So we do this with even littler than 2. We do this with little guys, right? Describing what they're doing. You describe what their hands are doing. Not what the toy's doing, not what you're doing, but what the child is doing with their hands. So when I coach parents, I'll say describe what their hands are doing. So I'm the child and my voice is the parent. You've got a red crayon. You're pretending like you're writing with the red crayon. Oh, now you have a red ball. Oh, you're catching the red ball. What a good job catching the red ball. So you've got a red cardinal. So they're learning all these vocabulary, right? Instead of, and we'll talk about this in a minute, what color is this? What color, what sound does this make? What sound does this make? That tends to be our natural go-to with little ones, quizzing them on what they know, but it can be a loss of connection if they don't know the answer, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So they're hearing that description and learning the vocabulary at the same time. This also in our older kids, and our youngers too, but if you think about our kids with described as having inattention, then describing what they're doing actually slows down their thoughts and actually lets them practice that inner monologue. They hear you having that inner monologue for them, and eventually they do it for themselves. So I've seen kids diagnosed with ADHD and come in. You may know these kids that don't play with the toys, but just kind of play at the toys and dump the toys and aren't actually able to slow down and play functionally with the toys. I've seen when parents start to describe what they're doing, they're able to slow down and stay focused on an activity for a good chunk of time that they weren't doing before. So this is another one of those skills that sounds so simple, but really is kind of magical when you watch it happen. So you copy their physical movement. You're making music, you're softly petting the dog. So you can see how you would use it in everyday life when you watch them doing something. You're eating with your fork. Oh, you're taking a bite of your chicken, so you can use it in everyday life to kind of just give them that vocabulary. And then enjoy your time together. So be enthusiastic, and this provides, you can provide physical affection with our real littles that love a hug. I just love playing with you. One that I said to my son one time that I think really he liked was, I've looked forward to playing with you all day. I'm loving our time together. And that was, I think said that to him after we'd had a particularly hard day, and then we had our playtime together, and I was able to share. It was kind of like, I see it as like kind of like a reset button. Sometimes you need a reset button with kiddos. And if you work with kids, sometimes even kids you work with, you're like, whew, okay, we got to reset. So let's sit down with them one-on-one and have that reset button, and then you can bring that enjoyment back into the relationship. Because imagine that you went out to coffee with somebody and your friend was like, I have looked forward to this all day. I'm enjoying spending time with you. That would feel so good, right? And to our kids too. So just what we want in a relationship is what's going to help strengthen that relationship with toddlers and older kids. Okay, so there's also some things to avoid during that special playtime in order to build upon that really safe, calm, enjoyable feeling during playtime. And I'm not saying to avoid these things all day, because that would be pure insanity, right? If you didn't ask questions, give commands, or point out mistakes all day. But during our playtime, and as much as possible throughout the day, try to sprinkle these things in. So we want to avoid questions, because they interrupt the play. They ask for answers that the child may not know. What color is this? What are you making now? Do you want me to help you? And so when we pepper questions, they can't really go where they want it to go, right? And their whole day is full of questions and commands, right? So this 5 minutes, or when they get home with you, sprinkle this time where they don't feel like they're in boot camp, right? So we're gonna avoid questions. Avoiding questions is really super hard, especially the questions where your voice goes up at the end. So the kid says, I got bird. You've got a bird? I'm playing with Play-Doh. You're playing with Play-Doh? Because what does that sound like? Sounds like I don't approve of what they're doing. So imagine you're going out on a hot date with your significant other, and you come out in a red dress or a nice new shirt, and you say, I'm wearing this red dress. And they say, you're wearing that red dress? As opposed to, you're wearing that red dress. Changes the whole night, right? Goes from is it gonna be an enjoyable night or a not so enjoyable night? Same with our kiddos, right? They interpret that, when your voice goes up at the end, it can be interpreted as criticism. Then we're also gonna avoid commands. Again, not all day, because you have to give commands, and we're gonna talk about the most effective commands to give children. Because playing is a time the child can lead, and commands put the parent in charge. And remember, we're letting this be the child-directed session. We're letting the kid be the leader in this. It can minimize negative interactions when we avoid commands. So if you're constantly commanding the play, look what mom has. Try using this block. Put this one over there. Why don't you put the train track there? The kid is going to be like, what am I doing? I don't get to do it. I want to do this. So we're going to avoid commands because it takes over the lead of the play. And then avoid criticizing, because it can impact self-esteem, creates an unpleasant interaction, and it doesn't stop bad behaviors necessarily. Criticizing oftentimes has the opposite effect of that. So pointing out what they're doing wrong doesn't give them what they're supposed to be doing. So saying stop running doesn't tell the kid what they should be doing, right? And so I've seen that command given, stop running, and the kid, this is an older kid, but they start skipping really fast, right? Okay, that's legit, right? You told me to stop running. So we're gonna talk about what to do to give more effective commands in a minute. Okay, and we're gonna come back actually to the no hurting sequence. So let's talk a little bit about emotions. Toddlers want it all, right? Choices are new to them. They're not used to having this option that they get to decide what they want. It's a whole new world to them. They're used to being put where they're gonna be put, being done, put clothes on that mom and dad want on them. The choices thing is a new world, and the world he discovers is not made quite the way he would have it, and its rules fly in the face of how he thinks things ought to be. He ought to be able to eat that big old cake because it looks delicious. Last night my daughter said, we call her Roro sometimes, Roro sees good food and she eats it. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. So, but why not, right? They want to. They don't understand. Choosing sometimes means they get something, but what? I've also got to give something up. I don't get that. I want to sit on mom's lap, but I want to slide too. I choose slide, but now I'm giving up sitting on mom's lap. So a choice is a new concept to them. They're getting something, but they don't understand this giving up thing. Why can't I do both? So when they say no, it might be in response to this confusion. They don't understand sometimes what this choosing stuff means. Or it may be said in this response to a new sense of autonomy. Again, this is a new world to them. They're learning these things. When I was, after undergrad, I joined the Peace Corps and I was in Bulgaria. And when I first got placed in a family, I knew zero Bulgarian. And so I was placed in this world, and in Bulgaria, do you know how they say, now I have to think about this. Do you know how they say, how do we say yes with our head? That's no in Bulgaria. So I was placed in this world where everything was different, and I had to learn to communicate. That's a toddler. They're placed in this world and having to learn how to communicate, and it's so confusing. So it's a new sense of autonomy. No is also a frequent response that toddlers receive. When they're infants, you don't really have to tell them no because they're not doing anything, right? But as soon as they start to walk, this new word is introduced into their world. No, 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 don't do that. No, don't touch that. No. So this is a big word in their vocabulary now. So they're going to say it more too, right? And they're also going to fight back against hearing it and being told it a lot. Parent and toddler often stare at each other across the gulf of mutually opposing expectations, and hugs can no longer restore the pleasure of the bond. Hugs alone. I would say hugs do help though, for sure. So let's watch what we label a temper tantrum.
Kai throws his temper tantrum when I take away his toothbrush. So dramatic. Oh, it's so dramatic, Kai. It's so dramatic. Oh. Hey, knock it off. No. Hey. Hey. No. Hey, stop it. Yeah. So stop crying.
What are some thoughts about what's going on?
Frustrated kid.
A frustrated kid, okay. She may be concerned about what externally people are, I mean, if somebody was there, what somebody's thinking about it, like, why is he acting that way? Something he wanted was taken away from him, and he had a big feeling about it, right? So how do we usually talk to parents about temper tantrums? Thank you. Maybe slide 12.
Give me just a sec.
Okay. So how people usually talk about what we call temper tantrums, and what is usually labeled a temper tantrum from older to all the way down to very young, right? Doctors call, or people call temper tantrums that age. They're having a tantrum because they're not getting what they want. They just want attention. Ignore them unless they're physically hurting themselves. Don't react. Stand your ground. Don't give in to their demands because they'll stop when they realize that you're not paying them attention. Thank you. They will use words to tell you how they feel when they're older. These are all things that I've heard people say that they were told how to manage tantrums, and what we've told parents of older kids how to manage tantrums. But what I think is that advice just trickled down to our youngest kiddos. And so while there's little research on how to manage what is termed a tantrum in our littles, the advice that works with older kids has been given to our youngest kids. And that is not what they need. You saw the baby that had a toothbrush taken away. What did you notice his body was doing? Did you notice what he was doing? Yeah, he was leaning into his mom. It was something that was him and I wouldn't have recognized this before, you know, I think I've trained specifically on little bitties. He was asking for help. And then I thought back about clients I'd had before, little ones, and I could remember them reaching for mom when they had that. When something happened that they didn't know what was going on, or when they had a big feeling, is what we're gonna talk about next. Disruptive behaviors in children under age 2 are signs of emotional dysregulation rather than deliberate attention-seeking acts or as components of a coercive parent-child interaction cycle. Toddlers don't possess the cognitive or emotional skills to manage those independently. They can't do it. They're not trying to be manipulative. They're not trying to work the system. They don't have the ability to do those things yet. The early parent-child attachment relationship is the vehicle through which capacities for emotion and behavior regulation emerge. So they've gone from infant, and then we want them to go to big kiddo. There's that whole phase in between where we've got to give them those skills, and that's what this is about. So let's change our language for our little guys, and even our big guys sometimes, and let's talk about a big emotion versus a temper tantrum, because that to me takes away that manipulative connotation. A big emotion is a change in their behavior that often includes crying, whining, yelling that appears to indicate an overwhelming emotional reaction that is difficult to control. I have had these myself as an adult. I've had a very big emotion. And you know, sometimes when I have a big emotion, I need somebody to be there with me, beside me. And I know how to regulate myself. These little ones don't. May include a demand for immediate parent access or a strong rejection of them, pushing away. Sometimes both in the same 30 seconds, right? They don't know what to do. Involves a change in facial expression and vocalization beyond normal crying sometimes, yelling or whining. Might include physical aggression. So they're having this big emotion and it's coming out of their body, and the only way they know how to show you. Get a lot of biting in daycares because they're having big emotions. Might include destruction of property, flailing, arching their back, falling to the floor. Sometimes more unusual behaviors of turning to the corner, freezing, withdrawing, self-injury. They go into fight or flight, right? Fight, flight, or freeze. They're having this big emotion. They know they need to survive. Just like we go into fight, flight, or freeze when we have anxiety or a big emotion, they could do that too. So the first step in helping manage those big emotions is validating it and giving them the language that they're eventually going to need. Although I know very few adults that do this. So I start with my parents and say, please start to talk about your emotions. Validate your emotions to them and validate their emotions. So step one, provide an introductory statement. You seem, your body looks, you are, so many other options. So you look confused. Your body looks sad. Your shoulders are slumping. So it's giving them that language, but it's also teaching them, hey, what I'm feeling in my body right now, oh, that's this feeling? Oh, okay. Because that's what I'm going to do with my older kids. I'm going to try, and my adults, I'm going to try to teach them the connection between their thoughts, their feelings, and their actions. So let's lay the groundwork for that. Let's give them the words that describe what they're feeling in their body so that when we start to make those connections, they can understand that. So your face looks worried, or you seem scared, but you can do that. The good emotions, or the more desirable emotions that we want to point out to. You're really excited because you got that block to fit in the box. You're so happy to see grandma. So pointing out all the emotions so they can, and I always give this wheel to parents so that we don't just get stuck in sad, mad, angry, happy. And you can get this at the Defend Innocence project. So they have all kinds of words that they can use to convey that. And it's never, and it may seem like a big word, but if you start using it, they'll catch on to it really quick. Two words that I love introducing very early on are flexible and proactive. Love those words because flexibility is something that a lot of kids and adults have trouble with, right? So I want to introduce to them. So if they get upset when their broccoli's in the wrong section of the plate, and I accidentally put it in the big section instead of the little section, instead of changing it so that they can avoid that feeling, thank you for being flexible. I love that it's okay. I love that I was able to put the broccoli in there. That was so flexible of you to do that. And using that word, they learn what it means. Proactive. Thank you for cleaning up before I asked you. That was so proactive. And eventually mine will say, Mom, I was proactive, right? So if you introduce it to them, they will learn it. And then they'll have those words. So some examples, I know it's sad when you have to stop playing. That's a huge one. Leaving the park, leaving the children's museum. I bet y'all seen some throwdowns. Yeah, so I know it's really sad when we have to stop playing. Mommy's sad too. But validating it doesn't mean that you don't follow through with your expectations. So they're learning, I can have this feeling, but I still got to do what's expected, right? I can feel really sad and upset, but I still got to leave. What you don't want to do is validate it and then say, okay, we can stay, so you can be happy, right? That's not going to do anybody any favors later on. So validating their emotion doesn't mean letting the behavior continue, right? So we're validating it, but carrying on with life. You look proud of yourself for figuring that out. You look happy because you finished coloring your page. You seem tired and ready for a nap. No, I don't. That'll turn into that. But so just validating how they're feeling. You look scared when that made a loud noise, right? Meeting them where they are. So instead of telling them they shouldn't feel that way, that didn't hurt you, get up. That's not sad. You'll be fine. You're really sad. You fell and you hurt yourself. So validating how they feel. And then, if it does become a really big emotion, we're gonna help them co-regulate that. So they can't do it themselves. And so when we talk about sleep and self-soothing, sometimes a child cannot regulate themselves. And so they need help to regulate. Eventually they will be able to learn to soothe themselves. They will be able to manage their own emotions. But they're gonna do that at first by having someone to regulate it with them. So I'm gonna use my model. Very creepy model. So Sally's having a big emotion, so I'm gonna come in closely. So if I'm far away, let me use an example of, she was trying to get the bird in the box and it wouldn't fit. So she's getting frustrated and she starts screaming and crying, so I'm gonna move over to her. I'm gonna come in close. I'm gonna assist because she was trying to do something. You wanted the bird to go in the box. And so I'm going to assist her in that while I'm making a verbal statement that it'll be taken care of. Mommy will help you. We can make the bird fit in the box. I'm going to label the emotion. You are frustrated because you couldn't get the bird in the box, and provide gentle touch and words to the child. So mommy's here to help you. We can work and get the bird in the box. So help her solve the problem, emotional, validate, and soothe. And if that big emotion still continues, what I usually have parents do is pick them up and provide that more gentle touch. Mommy's here. It's okay. Mommy's here. We're gonna work. But we don't. For another example would be, I've had somebody playing with hand sanitizer and it had to be taken away. I can't give them back the hand sanitizer, right? Because they were gonna eat it or something. So mommy's here. I know it's hard to stop playing with things that we like, but we've got to go now. Mommy's here. And so I'm validating her emotion, but I'm soothing her, but I'm still leaving and not giving her the hand sanitizer, right? So I'm there, I'm helping her calm down, and but still carrying on with what we have to do. And again, this is useful for older kiddos too, because you can imagine an older kiddo getting upset about having to leave the kids' museum. You can see an older kiddo getting upset about having something removed from them. You can still use this for older kids. And if they don't have the skill, there's not an age where you magically get emotion regulation skills. I think that people think that, and I think that we think that, but there's not a magic age. It's something that kind of has to be taught. Not to every kid. Now, some kids are, up there, but most kids, most people need to be taught how to regulate their emotions. Because again, we want adults that can regulate their emotions. And there's a lot of adults that can't regulate their emotions, so let's start when they're little. And part of that is us regulating our emotions first, right? Part of that is regulating our own emotions. So before starting the play session, cluing into yourself, checking your own, the same acronym CARES, checking your own cognitions, helping yourself. So we teach deep breathing to caregivers. In a training video we watched, when the parent went in to soothe the child, what they did is they started taking deep breaths. And the kiddo started doing it too. So when older kids come into us for therapy, one of the things we teach all people that come in for therapy usually is deep breathing. But I'm not going to be able to tell a 2, 3, 4, 7-year-old even, no, if you're upset, you just need to stop and take some deep breaths. They're not going to be able to do that. That's a challenge for me to do sometimes, right? When I get triggered by something. So doing it with them teaches them that the adults do it, and also kind of gives them somebody to do, teaches them that skill. And then they learn from us, and as we do it with them. Being aware of your own emotions. Babies and toddlers read emotions before they can understand language, right? They know, they can sense what people are feeling. So what emotion are you bringing into the interaction? And being sensitive and kind to yourself. What would you say to a friend who is having a challenge that you're having? You probably say to yourself more unkind things than you would ever say to somebody else. So remind yourself of, if you're having a hard time with your kiddo, remind yourself of the good times that you had. Remind yourself when you felt like a really good mom, and tell yourself, I'm a really good mom. I'm doing the best I can right now with what I have. I know what it's like to feel like you're not doing a good job when your kid is screaming and your other kid is screaming, and then your other, I don't only have two, but if you have another and another other kid is screaming, you can feel like I'm not doing what I need to be doing, but tell yourself, I'm doing what I can with what I've got right now. And so take care of yourself. When you're on an airplane, what do they say? You gotta put your own oxygen mask on first, because otherwise you're gonna be passed out and the kids aren't gonna be taken care of. You gotta put your own oxygen mask on before you put their oxygen mask on. So if you need to take a hot bath, do a meditation, take some deep breaths in the bathroom, take care of yourself first. So let's talk real quick. The last thing that we'll cover probably is under reaction. So let's use so in your interaction, let's use the example of the plug socket. So I'm not saying let them stick their finger in the plug socket, obviously, but when we do this, don't put your finger in the plug socket, you're gonna die, oh my God. They're like, whoa, that was exciting. I'm gonna keep doing that, right? If you have a big reaction, toddlers are gonna think that is the best thing in the world, and guess what? They're gonna know how to control you and do it again. Also, it's their job to explore, right? So we're gonna not let them do it, but we're gonna underreact. So Sally's touching the plug socket. I'm just gonna come over and say, oh, look at these blocks over here. And maybe have a conversation later about not touching the plug socket. So I'm gonna underreact and then have a conversation later. Underreact and distract. With toddlers, they're exploring, underreact and distract. So if Sally's sitting at her high chair, dropping food on the floor, it's cute the first time, right? But the 500th time, it's not cute. But if you have a big reaction, oh, that was fun. It's gonna keep happening, keep happening. Underreact and distract. Oh, I'm gonna eat my peas and distract. Underreact and distract with toddlers, right? And then have a conversation later about behavior. Even with olders, we talk about underreacting to problem behavior, praising the behavior we want to see. So for example, if it's a word or a sound that we don't like being said or done, underreacting, which is hard sometimes when it's a word that triggers us, but if we give it a big reaction, which I've done before, because it's hard, because in public you don't want them to say stuff, but if you give a big reaction, then they know how to get you, and they're gonna keep doing it to get that big reaction. So, and then when you ignore, they'll say, hey, can I say this word? Hey mom, can I say this? And I'm ignoring, can I say this? And so at first it can get worse with our olders I'm talking about now. It can get worse before it gets better, but consistently underreacting tends to curb problem behavior. So you wanna redirect enthusiastically. So not so enthusiastic about the plug socket, really enthusiastic about the blocks over here, because they want to do what's exciting and what they want to explore. No hurting sequence real quick. Kids, toddlers hit, bite, pinch, pull hair when they have a big emotion. They're not doing it because they're gonna be serial killers when they grow up. They're doing it because parents worry, oh my God, I'm raising a serial killer because they're biting all these kids. They're gonna be Hannibal Lecter. No, they're not doing it because of that. They're doing it because they're having a big emotion and they do not know how to express that emotion. So it's not out of malicious intent. And so let's redirect that and reframe it, and we're gonna stop the behavior and redirect. So Sally's hitting me because she's having a big emotion. So I hold her hands and get on her eye level. No hitting, gentle hands. Look away for 3 seconds. Gentle hands. And then distract. Look over here, I've got a red block. And if a big emotion occurs, I move into cares with come in close, assist. If hitting again, repeat. No hitting, gentle hands, distract. Because our toddler is not being malicious, they don't want to hurt me, they're having a big emotion, so I'm distracting, and then emotion regulation. With our older kids, obviously we're gonna manage it differently, but with our toddlers, their intent is not to hurt you as their parent or their caregiver. It's because they're having an emotion that they can't manage. And then move right back in with the pride skills: praise, reflect, imitate, describe, and enthusiasm. We're not going to have time to go over parent-directed interaction, which involves giving specific skills regarding giving directions, but it can all be found on the Parent-Child Interaction Therapy Toddler website with UC Davis, and it'll talk to you about giving effective commands and instructions and positive attention for following the instructions and how to, so I'm going to skip over this. How many minutes? Okay, so I'm going to skip over the giving effective commands. You can find this handout, and it's all about giving clear commands, the types of commands that kids are most likely to follow. I will say with toddlers, the most important thing is being close proximity and adding a gesture in. So I've had little ones look like they just were, I mean, we've had done hearing tests before because we're like, they're not understanding it. So adding in a gesture, put the crayon put the red crayon in the red box, and pointing to the red crayon in the red box, because they need that visual. Toddlers need that. So 2 important things with toddlers: close proximity and a gesture. And in parent-child interaction therapy for toddlers, we don't do a consequence, but we do tell, show, try again, guide when we give a direction. So we give the direction, we show them. So we give a direction, put the red crayon in the box, and we wait 5 seconds. This is putting the red crayon in the box. Sally's turn. And if she isn't able to do that, then I do hand over hand. That's putting the red crayon in the box. Good job putting the red crayon in the box. So I'm giving them I'm showing them how to follow a command. So I'm not getting mad at them for not doing it. I'm assuming that they can't or don't know how to do it, and I'm teaching them how to do it. So you can do that with little bitty ones, right? This is also available on the PCIT Toddler website with UC Davis. And then you could also do this with language encouragement. So if Sally wants a cup, she says, So we have kids with, So we want to encourage that language. Say cup, please. So that if they do a verbal approximation, you say, cup. Thank you for saying cup, please. Here you go. If they aren't unable to, that's cup, please. And you give them the words. So encourage the language. So that's kind of guiding them too, because if you just give them the object when they that's not encouraging language. Encourage language by giving them the words to say. Even if they don't have the words, that's okay. You can still encourage the use of language and by giving them the words. The single most important skill that parents can acquire is playing. So everything that kids learn is through play. They learn best through play, right? We were talking before about how in some countries, like in Finland, play-based learning goes on for a lot longer than in other countries. And so we know that kids learn best through play, which is why this museum is so beautiful, right? Because kids are learning in everything they're doing here. So the best way to teach littles is through interactions and play. And so always start there before moving into real life situations. And that's it. Sorry, that was a lot of information. It could have been a lot more, but I cut it down. So that was a lot of information about toddlers, big emotions, toddler development. There could be more that I want to go into, brain development. We could, but we'll have to do that another time. So if there are any questions that I did not answer during that talk, I have my card up here. I have 4 books up here that you're welcome to come and look through. The Whole Brain Child is one I recommend. Bloom, 50 Things to Say, Think, and Do with Anxious, Angry, and Over-the-Top Kids. Love it. One of my favorites, Playful Parenting, and The Emotional Life of the Toddler. A lot of the information I gave today. And then the PCIT UC Davis website. So, any questions that I can answer? I'll be glad to stay after if anybody has specific questions. Oh, thank you. Thank you for putting my red ball in the box. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.